emergency management, and about $60,000 in storm damage repairs. So we now put this all together. The proposed general fund budget is increasing from 6.6 million to 7.5 million. That's about $900,000, which is a 13.7% increase. Of that, $429,000 are the loans, and that's about 48%. Operating cost is $236,000, and then salary and benefits are the other two. If you look at the distribution across the whole budget, 34% is salaries, 19% is benefits, 37% is operating cost, and 10% is the loans, the debt service. If you break down the increase of $900,000, so the 47% is the debt, 26% is the operating cost, and then 19% of the benefits. And so if you take the three big ones, if you take the building projects, the health insurance, and the Casella and Lebanon landfill cost, those three alone are responsible for 76% of the increase of last year to this year, or right. So 24% is essentially everything else. Compared to other towns, so the town tried to get input from other towns about their changes were going to be in proposed increases. 23 towns responded. Canaan did not. I don't think Lebanon and Hanover did either. The closest ones that I saw on the list were New London, Grantham, and Sunapee. The median operating budget increase was 7.9%. I've listed New London, Grantham, and Sunapee there. They're about 11, 20, and 7. The total appropriations increase was 10.1%, where Enfield's total proposed increase is 11.3%, and without the Whitney Hall and public safety loans, it is 5.3%. So again, shows you how big the impact of the two loans we approved 2 years is. This is assuming that several of the proposed articles are passing, which includes, is liquidating the right word? The the list of funds, what are they called? Closing. There's a bunch of funds with money in it, and the proposal is to close those. And to transfer that money into a combination of other accounts. And so this 11.3% increase assumes that about 110,000 of that money is used to offset. So unassigned fund balance. As most of you know, quite a few years ago, the general fund unassigned balance was negative. And so over the past several years, the town has been working to restore that. And so in 2020, we increased the recommended select board minimum of 8% for town policy. And then we've kind of held constant, but are starting to slowly decrease in that unassigned fund balance. So we're on track to actually fall to the minimum. So while we are proposing this year to use some of the unassigned fund balance to minimize the impact to the taxes to the town, it's not something we'll be able to continue doing because we're in a slow decline of that fund balance. It's essentially our savings account. If we look at the surplus of last year, it's estimated to be $281,000. This is an unaudited number, so the number is going to change once the audit is completed. 76% of that is big movers that are shown on the right. And if you look at that, the majority of the surplus is actually unfilled positions in town. And so if you take the unfilled wage, if you take the wages underruns and benefits underruns, you get that most of the surplus is those underruns. There's also some surplus as a result of debt. And as you can see, surplus from debt and unfilled positions is exceeding the surplus, and that is true because our operating costs are actually overrunning. And so the total operating costs across the town, what we're spending to maintain the service is actually bigger than what we're budgeting. So, despite the undesignated fund balance slightly going down, the budget committee is recognizing that, taxes are going up a lot, partially because of the loans in Casella and a lot of other things. And so we're recommending to use that fund balance for a number of things, including finishing the Shed Street remediation, which is a one-time expense, spending money to help with repairs on the community building, also spending money for town office relocation, one-time expense. Smaller things we included were department radios, a road survey, and culverts. I believe the road survey, and Dan can correct me if I'm wrong, is mainly because when we were in the meeting for capital improvement, we didn't have a good idea when we should be fixing what bridge and, which one should go when. And so it's based on somebody's recommendation, but we felt it was important to have some more professional input on what bridges should be fixed when, because we don't want to be wrong. At the same time, we don't want to be replacing bridges, before that they need to be replaced. Nor do we want them to fall in when somebody drives over it with a big truck. Other uses were, so this is going to be a warrant article 2, is to creating a trust fund for police retention. As the police chief can explain, the cost for training a new police officer is expensive. And so the thought is, let's spend a little bit of money in a retention program because it should pay for itself. Police officers are on a 3-year contract. If we can keep somebody here for another 3 years, it saves us a lot of money compared to training somebody new in the academy and then having them go to a different town that pays them a couple of dollars an hour more. And then again, we have that $100,000 for the property tax reduction. So the total recommended by the budget committee of 290 of the undesignated fund is actually bigger than our estimated surplus. So we do expect that to go down. And so in future years, we're going to have to not do that as much. So if you summarize all these operating expenses, so the top line is that 6.6 million and the 7.5. That's that 13.66 and $900,000 increase. And then you see other line items for water fund, sewer fund, capital projects, and TIF. And so it's actually the bottom number that's going to be on the warrant, right? And so even though that bottom number is on the warrant, as you'll see in next slides, that doesn't mean that all of that is coming from taxes, because there's other intra-fund offsets in the revenue side that account for, say, water, sewers, and capital projects. So speaking of, if you look on the revenue side, we're expecting an increase of 6.8%. And so you're seeing that there's a slight decrease in on-property tax revenue, licenses, permits, and fees. We're doing that because we have noticed a trend in town that those revenues are decreasing. It started in the pandemic. I think people are buying fewer cars and not new ones, and therefore we're bringing in ones. Then we have other estimates too for state and federal resources. And so if you add it all up, including what we're planning to use from undesignated fund balance, we see essentially a 2.7% decline in our revenues. It's going up net because the intra-operating transfers are increasing. And those are the ones accounting for water, sewer, TIF, and other funds. So we now take the revenues and so top line is that appropriation from all funds, right? You then have contributions to CIP. You have the bonus proposal that's in the warrant, funded from undesignated fund balance is the negative, and then less estimated revenues, which is including the intra-fund transfers. And so at the end of the day, you come out at the recommended tax for next year would be $5.86 million, which is a 12.9% increase compared to last year. So at the end of the day, everybody worries what, like, I hear people talking about tax rates a lot, and I'm going to give my speech on why we shouldn't do that. So if you talk about tax rates, it essentially ignores the two things. One, it ignores that the valuations are changing. And so next year we're going to have a town-wide reevaluation. We would all hope it goes up, right? That is going to bring the tax rate down because we're going to collect the same amount of money from revenues, right? So because the valuation is going up doesn't mean we're going to collect more taxes. And so the state is going to set the rate based on the valuation and based on what we want to collect. So if our valuation magically increases 10%, your rate could stay the same, but you're going to pay more because your value of your home went up 10%. So looking at the rate doesn't make a lot of sense. You should really look at how much are we going to collect from taxes, and then how much is that increasing, and then compare that increase to your bill. So I tried to do that, and you see the word estimated all over this slide because I don't want people to hang me like next year saying, hey, you said it was going to go up 6.24% and it was 6.5%. And so I tried to estimate based on the published school article, which has a 3.2% increase. It's actually 3.16, so I rounded it to 3.2. I guessed that the county would just go up by COLA of 2.8. I guessed state education was going to go up by COLA of 2.8. And so if you put those four contributions together, based on last year's rates, with county and state going up 2.8, school 3.2, and the town the 12.9, the total rate using last year's numbers going up 6.24%, right? That doesn't mean your rate next year will go up 6.24 because the valuations are going to change. So the best way to look at it is if your piece of the pie is staying the same next year, which for most people on average it will, but a lot of people are going to see increases and decreases, which nobody can predict. But if your piece of the pie stays the same, your taxes will go up 6.24%. So if your bill last year...
When you say piece of pie, what do you mean?
So the total town valuation is what, $600 million, right? If your property was worth $1 million, your piece of the pie is 1 out of 600. If in the reval, the whole town is worth 1.2 billion, and your property is 2 million, it's still 1 over 600. Your piece of the pie stays the same, right? And now, I know there's concerns of people who live on the lake that their property taxes will go up more. You know, I don't live on the lake, but it seems like that's a valid concern. At the same time, the town is actually trying to bring in some additional revenue from real estate development, right? And I know there's lots of irons in the fire, and we have to see what happens. But so there's really there's only 3 ways you can reduce your bill, I think. Maybe it's only 2. So is to bring in more revenue, right? Increasing the cost of fees in town, bring in more revenue. Increase property taxes, right? Or, sorry, too many things. I was not prepared for this thing. So the only way you can bring your property taxes down is to spend less, right? Bring in more revenue, right? It's one or the other. Am I missing one? No, it's one of these 2. And so you can bring in more revenue 2 ways. More neighbors. People may then say, well, but then your expenses will go up. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Or we start say, charging at the transfer station. That brings in revenue, but again, that may not be wanted by people, and I think the budget committee should not make that decision. So bottom line, if you walk with one thing, away here with one thing is with all the proposed things we're doing today, I think personally, my taxes will go up 6.25%. And I don't know how much it's going to change. There's an uncertainty band there. Could I be off by 1%? Yes. Am I off by 5%? No. So to illustrate the impact of, and in hindsight, I should have made these lines thicker and changed the green. But so in the last couple years and last time meeting, I showed the town rate in red at the bottom. And so you see the blue one is your total tax rate. That's your bill. And so two things you observe, or I did, during the time when the undesignated fund balance went down, the total town tax rate stayed relatively flat. The total tax bill went up and the valuation dropped all at the same time. So I wasn't here for that, but I assume there's some correlation between those events. So if you look from 2018 to 19, there's been an increase in valuation, right? And the tax rate kind of stayed flat. Well, but you paid more on your tax bill because the value of your property went up. So I'm going to stress again, don't look at rates. Comparing tax rates between towns is the same problem. It all depends on the valuation and all those things. Don't look at rates. Look at total money collected and divided by the total number of residents. Do something like that. Look at real dollars. Don't look at rates, in my personal opinion. So, future. I know people think, so if you look at this slide, so we've gone up 2 years, right, on the town side, and the total one has gone up 2 years. I understand why there may be concerns why, well, next year is just going to be the same way. It's going to go up again. And yes, I can't predict next year. And I'm sure there's going to be other things, but a big increase in the loans. There's no loans on the ballot this year that are worth $7 million, and I don't think people would approve them right now. So I don't think we'll see like a $400,000 increase as a result of loan. Shed Street is going to be done. That is actually not increasing, it's actually decreasing. It comes off the books. Waste management, there's some built-in increases, I believe, in the contract. I'm looking at, there's small increases, but we should not see these, $90,000 to $100,000 increases next year in waste management. Those three alone are 66% of the increase. I don't expect to see those next year. There may be something else, but I don't see us having this big jump next year. We're going to continue to apply for grants, and several people on the budget committee have been thinking about like, hey, what action items do we give the town as we go towards next year? And one that I believe has come up from several people is we want people to look at health insurance providers. That doesn't mean we're going to change it, but let's get some data and let's do some competitive bidding to compare health insurance, because a 16% increase year over year is a lot. On town meeting, you will see the warrant articles here. I haven't put them there. And then here's everybody on the budget committee. So that is the end of my presentation.
Before you open it to the public,
Yes.
I have a few things to clarify, but you can talk to the board if you want for.
Just keep that. Yeah, we can hear.
So before we can open up the public comment, Ed, town manager, wants to clarify a few things. Does the select board or the budget committee want to make any comments?
Oh, as I said last night, very strong presentation once again, very clear to the point. Thank you.
I think the select board will wait. If I'm looking around and seeing correctly, I will ask. I'm hearing some whisper, which makes it hard to hear back here. So if we could keep the side noise to a minimum, it will help us hear up there.
Ready? So I just wanted to clarify, you mentioned in the beginning that, some employees were choosing more expensive health plans. I want to make it clear to everybody that we don't offer a multitude of health plans. What that is a employee moving from like a single person plan to a family or a two-person plan.
Yes.
We're not, they don't pick a more expensive plan. And then, we do plan on getting Shed Street ready and sold before next year. You talked about that. I think the only other two things I wanted to point out was the road survey. Won't necessarily do a lot of bridge work, but it's a lot of road condition matrix, which works the same way. Instead of someone just deciding, hey, we want to pave that road, it'll show us the condition of roads and allow us to pre-plan the future a little bit more. And then I just wanted to reiterate and harp on the fact that we budget really conservative on purpose. So when Dimitri's saying we think this is going to be a 6.24% increase, we purposefully try to slightly underestimate revenues and put things in place. So, and we base it on this year's valuation with no change. On average, we do see an increase in valuation every year. Not every year do we increase, but using those parameters, we're really trying to paint a worst case scenario. And usually the tax rate comes in just a little bit lower than what we present. So not to say it's going to, but you know, we do budget that way on purpose because I would much rather Dimitri tell you 6.24 and we come in at 6 than go the other direction. So.
For people that are standing, there are 3 or 4 chairs right here in front that you can help yourself.
Mike?
Ed, would you tell everyone, when we expect the state to tell us what our tax rate will be?
The tax rate's set in November, so it'll be
Next November.
next
when we'll-
November is when they do that, and they'll pull revenues at that time and look at different projections and things that we do to set the tax rate.
Thank you.
And so I'll add to that. So yeah, if you didn't know, your first bill is an estimate, right? And then your second bill is based on what the government is setting. And for example, last year, we were estimating the revenue from property taxes to be like 1.38, 5.38, and it ended up being like 5.19. And so it was lower. And that's partially because they look at the actuals through the year, and we're trying to estimate actual revenues. Jean was first earlier, and then you're second.
Jean Patton, I know I usually stand for the question, but it's way too early for that. So my first question is, I have seen a document recently that's dated January 29th with outstanding property taxes that are due from July and December for $428,684. And I'm wondering, how is that accounted for? And how are we sort of covering for that lost revenue?
Yeah, that's still on the books, and as soon as the law allows us, we've been taking those properties by tax deed if they're still there. If you paid attention the last couple of years, we take very few, and those usually end up getting paid, but there are a lot of people that fall behind. There is interest payments and things that go along with that, so they pay a little bit more to do that, but I mean, we don't budget extra for that. It just, we move along and we make it work.
For me, and I don't know about everyone that's involved in that process, it sort of sends a message that people are struggling and people are having a hard time paying their taxes. That's a lot of money to be outstanding. So that's my first. My second question is, I know Dimitri talked about keeping, pretty much the same staffing levels. I know that there was at least one new position created called Clerk of the Works. And I'm wondering, what is the dollar amount tied to that position and what's the dollar amount for that going forward?
I guess that's technically not a new position of the town. We hired a consultant that would be filling that position. So that's not a new position that the town created, but it's, approximately $80,000 divided by the 2 building projects, but we did put $20,000 in this budget to help offset that.
And so the money for that clerk of the works, where is that being covered?
In the budget, I'd have to look at the exact line item, but there's $20,000 in the budget, and then the rest is coming from the building project loan amounts.
Mr. Chairman, it occurs to me, some of us might be wondering if there's a speaking clock.
Yeah, I was wondering. Well, I'll have a speaking clock.
She
Gene,
can go
wanna
ahead
comment?
and call them, all right?
So I don't know your name.
I'm Leila Tarantelli.
Okay.
So quick question on Shed Street. It would seem that $75,000 to clean up Shed Street's a lot of money. It would also seem that the value of Shed Street is perhaps equivalent to what it would cost to clean up the site. So I'm a Realtor, so I always look at things from a Realtor's point of view. Instead of us paying to clean up the site, why can't we sell the site with the understanding that whoever buys it is going to have to pay $75,000 to clean up the site instead of it coming out of the taxpayers?
So one, it's more than 75 actually, because we spent money last year already. And then two, I'll let Ed comment on the need for us to clean it up.
Yeah, it's an EPA brownfield cleanup, so we are legally responsible to clean it up because we caused the pollution that's on the site. So it's not someone degraded, something like that. It's actually, there's asbestos in the buildings, those things that we need to take down for the law. I mean, we could try to shift that to a builder or developer, but it's very unlikely that they would take that on, so.
So the second question or part of that is that Enfield seems to own a lot of property. So can't we sell some of our property to offset some of the expenses of cleaning up a property?
We'll be looking at that, but we own some property, but we don't own a lot of property that's not being used. So
I beg to differ.
I'll beg
to differ big time.
we have some and we're continuing
We have
to
a
look
lot.
at that, so.
We have a lot. And I think that that's something that, as the town manager, you should consider, instead of continually to raise our budget and look for revenue resources. I think we have revenue resources that we can reduce the budget. So, might do something.
Hi, I'm Mark Tarantelli.
He's with me.
So, first of all, the budget committee, you guys do a great job. You have a hard job. I wouldn't want it, okay? But I'm making hard choices right now. My kids are making hard choices. All of my neighbors are making hard choices. The economy isn't great. We can talk about inflation all we want, but it's really still bad. So what hard choices has the town made with this budget?
So, I would say people have been trimming the budget for multiple years now, which you can see from the fact that the costs, like we're overrunning the operating costs. Service levels, yes, have stayed the same. So on the service level side, there haven't been any hard choices made, in my opinion. Again, I don't think that the budget committee unilaterally should decide to make significant changes to service levels. I honestly don't even think the select board should decide it. I think that should happen at the meeting, in my personal opinion. And so I would encourage people to come to town meeting and propose to make changes to service levels. Don't just go, oh, let's vote to reduce the budget 10%, right? Because what's going to happen then is you're leaving it up to the town manager to then decide what to cut. And they may cut things you don't like, because you're now essentially telling them, I want you to cut the budget. I don't really care where, go do it. I would rather have people stand up and say, hey, I think we should just get rid of this. We should just not do it anymore. And then cut the service and the cost associated with that. That is how I recommend we do it. Anybody from the budget committee want to chime in, or the select board on that view?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not even just service levels. It's gonna become staffing levels.
I consider those the same.
Well, yeah, you can't do it here, and you can't, say, do it at town meeting it has to be, you have to say what you're going to cut. You're right, you can't say, let's cut $250,000 because it's gonna get cut someplace based on somebody's decision as opposed to the town's decision. I guess my other thing with this, and it's not on this, but it's on another one, which is just looking at this budget, it means next year, we're probably gonna be looking at 8 or 9% at least. Because there is some services that we did cut that's in this budget, which is the salary amount for a portion of a police officer. Okay, that's gonna come back next year. So that when we say the salary is only going up by 2.8%, that's because we cut $50,000 or $60,000 from that police officer. So in actual, you're probably talking about salary going up by 5% next year. Plus, you've got $100,000 you've taken out of undesignated. That's another 2%. There's things there that we're doing this year to keep it down to the 13%, where if we hadn't have done that, the true number is probably 16 or 17%.
That's good. Which comes back to, we're taking money out of the unassigned fund balance to lower the taxes.
Right.
But we can't keep doing that every year because we would go back to where we were close to 10 years ago, where the fund balance was just eroded.
But I think you're right. It comes down to jobs.
Yeah.
Because that's the low hanging fruit. That's where the money is. So people have to decide. Do they want to do away with the services that we consider essential right now, such as police coverage 24 hours? How many policemen do you think we should get rid of? How quickly do we want the roads plowed, sanded,
Right.
salted?
Yeah.
Fewer staff.
Right.
I mean, we can't do it. And it goes on from there.
Benefits is another piece.
Yeah.
We have two levels of benefits. We have benefits based on how long you've been here, which is if you've been here longer than, I think, 5 years, you pay less for your benefits if somebody's been here more than 5 years.
How long has that been in place?
Probably 5 years.
Yeah, I think it was a change about 5 years ago, but
Why?
I wasn't here.
Anybody know why we did that?
So we, as benefits got more and more expensive, and I think everybody knows if you've ever looked at your own paycheck or helps look at benefits for a company, they've gotten astronomically more expensive. So as a town, one of the things we said to ourselves was, how could we be fair and kind to our employees and control costs without penalizing long-term employees? And so we had to look very closely at benefits and what portion we could ask the staff to assume. And that is where it came from. It was a very, very, very hard ask. We deliberated. I think John can speak to it. It was not done lightly. It wasn't arbitrary. Every year we look at benefits and, it used to be the private sector, we could compete with benefits and retirement and say, oh, because everyone was like long-term job. And now having to stay somewhere 10 years to get vested isn't necessarily the most competitive thing. So we have to balance out what makes us be able to retain folks and give a good value to our town and still be respectful of our employees. And so that is where that came from.
And there's a very important word you use there, retain.
Yes.
Yeah, we have discovered it is so hard to retain employees. Literally, we have other towns calling some of our employees.
Yeah.
Making offers.
What percentage of the plan does the employee pay today?
We have multiple tiers that you just heard. The majority of the employees, the new employees, are at 19%. They'll be moving to 20% next year.
Yeah, and the older employees, how much less?
There's a 14% tier and an 8% tier, or 9% tier right now. And they'll be moving up another percent next year, so.
That's really good.
Back to the
Hi, did I hear correctly earlier that there was Heidi Sidley. Did I hear earlier that there was not an RFP done recently on the healthcare providers? And if
Correct.
not, is that when is that planned for, to help drive down costs? Cause, you know, I've seen that across every industry.
The budget committee,
RFPs will drive down costs in that
right,
area.
so the budget committee is asking the town that for next year we do that,
Next year?
because
And is there any analysis of what other towns are paying as far as the portion of the premiums?
Yeah, we
Is
do
that
that
being-
we do that every few years to make sure that we're staying in line with what other towns do.
And where is that exactly? Is that, you know, at the median or what percentile is that?
Yeah, we're moving right towards that. Most people are right in that 15 to 20% range is what they're paying. And then looking at different plans that they do, a large majority, I'd probably say somewhere in the 90% range, go with Health Trust, which is the government healthcare for New Hampshire, but we can definitely look at other companies, and we can look at different plans that Health Trust provides and see if there's any way to get the cost down a little bit.
sure,
Over the years, we've tried to retain services that we felt were important to the community. But you're the ones who have to let us know if you feel those should be cut somewhat. That's who we have to hear from, because we can't make those decisions.
You know, Bob Cusick, Star Driver. We moved here in 2000, so that puts us kind of in the middle of people, probably a lot of people before that. But, you know, I've been on the budget committee. Lee Carrier and I set up how the CIP thing runs now. So, and I'm very proud of the work that the budget committee has done. This is very thorough, and I said it is almost like what Lee Carrier did. In fact, I think it's a little better. But all you guys have to remember that since 2000, we've added services. We keep going. We have this nice thing over here. Oh, we have garbage. Oh, we have this, we have that. Oh, we want to put in the sewer and water line. It's going to increase. Well, the problem has been that all these things we wanted are building up. So every year it comes and even have to be replaced, or we're back early. I know, you know, we have Enfield Village Association, and we put money into there and they do wonderful things. So what we have to do is understand that stuff doesn't come free. And we have to figure out ways of doing it. Like I've been pushing forever for us to have housing, you know, in here. And there's been a lot of pushback on housing. There's been developments that have been put down because people don't want to do it. You can't have all the nice little pretty baubles without paying for them. And property is one way that we can do it. It isn't going to solve everything. You know, I'll just have to buy a new car for my wife next year just to make sure there's some more money to pay. It's a very important thing to focus on revenue. Don't just focus on cutting costs. Focus on how you're going to get more money in, and then try to hold the revenue or the things that contribute to it to a more or less steady stream while you catch up. We have some catching up to do.
We also can't afford our taxes.
No.
gentlemen.
Too bad.
I'm Sam Cook. Firstly, Dimitri and the budget committee, I also agree the presentation and the information that's presented is really well done, well organized. Shirley, following up on your comment about hearing from us and hard choices, and somewhat newer to the Enfield area, can you speak more about, I don't understand the recreational personnel, for example, that's an increase, or the youth sports and those, maybe help me understand if that's a hard choice that we're adding for services, but these $30,000, $50,000 choices, they add up as I'm looking through the budget. So maybe there's some background I can understand on that as an example of a service.
Well, the $20,000, I think it's $20,000, the increase in the personnel on recreation, it's a small amount is the recreation director. A lot of that is, you know, lifeguards, camp counselors, all those things weigh into that line. So it's not a single person. I've heard that from people thinking a single person was getting that raise. That's not the case. The youth sports we're looking at taking over will actually decrease the tax need. There's an increased expenditure, but we're also going to the other towns, getting revenue to come in that'll offset that and will actually help pay for a portion of the recreation director's salary, which will take that off of the Enfield tax rolls. They were moved to 40 hours a week last year, and 10 hours of those will be divided between the 5 towns, because we'll use 10 hours of that time for youth sports. So it's really, as Dimitri said in there, there's an increased cost, but it's offset on the revenue side as well. So it's not increasing the tax rate, but you know, it's a way that we're thinking we can provide a better service for the town at actually a little bit lower cost in this place. And then I also have charged him, as we move into that, to look at other ways to bring revenue into youth sports besides a little bit of taxes and placing the fees on the parents that play. So there's other possible revenue sources in the future.
And I don't remember if you told us this during our many meetings. Has there been any thought yet about whether the Enfield parents would have to still pay fees for the youth sports like they do today to MYSL?
They would, and it would be, I'm gonna say even across the board. If one of the towns decides not to pitch in their portion, then we'll have to charge more to the parents from that town to do that. But we're trying to offset the cost and keep things run like MYSL ran it. And I think the parents that do participate should have to pay some sort of fee, that the taxpayers aren't shouldering that burden.
So we're not going to increase the cost to the families, but we're going to provide a more consistent sports program for the towns.
Yeah, we're trying to run a more consistent administration. And like I said, we'll look for ways to increase revenue as well without shifting them.
Thank you.
Kurt Conrad's. Is it correct, my understanding that the tipping fees for regular trash is higher than the tipping fees for the recycling bins?
No.
The other way around.
Was.
Okay, well, maybe, okay. So the recycling fees are less.
They're more.
They're more.
Recycling.
Okay, I misstated what I wrote that, I'm sorry. Being that, right, what I understand has been for a number of years now, even probably before COVID started, the recycling, a large percentage of it ends up in the landfill anyways, in the end. At the end of the line, it goes to the landfill because there's no market. So nobody wants to take it, so that's where it goes. But I mean, we can still continue to have the 2 bins, but just say, Casella, just dump it.
So one idea we had, and again, I believe we can actually do that on our own. So most of the weight, so you pay per ton. Most of the weight of your recycling is glass. So if people simply, is that not true anymore?
No, it is, but
Okay.
I can give the math for that.
Okay, so if you take your glass and you don't throw it in recycling and you throw it in the trash, the cost of getting rid of that glass actually almost gets cut in half. Because I believe it's and Jim, I'm looking at you, it's $90 per ton for recycling, 50 for trash?
For the hauling.
No, for like
The
tipping?
Oh, the tipping fee is gonna be 105 for trash, and January it was 145 for recycling.
Okay, so it's not half, but it's essentially a third cheaper to throw your glass in your trash.
This just drives me nuts.
I know.
I'm gonna tell you right now. What kind of message are we sending to our kids who deeply care about this?
It would save the town about $5,200 annually to switch glass to trash.
Right, and so it goes to, so here, I'm gonna speak to something that Gene and others have made. It would be a savings, right? It would save $5,000 for the town if everybody took their glass and threw it in their garbage, right? My kids would challenge that, right? I bet other people in town would too. And again, I don't think the budget committee should unilaterally go make a decision that the whole town shall not throw their grass in the trash. let's have the discussion at town meeting, and heck, make the decision personally. Because honestly, there's nothing that stops you today from doing that, right? You can just take your glass, throw it in the trash and save some money for the town. I'm serious.
Bring your recyclables to the transfer station and only have one can for Casella to pick up.
Does it say?
That actually doesn't save any money
Yeah,
because
nothing.
now you have to pay. So we pay a certain amount of money for them to come to your house, whether you have it out or not. If you take your trash to the transfer station, we actually
No
have to pay to haul it.
Doesn't
It
matter.
doesn't change, the cost is the same. And so if you take your trash to the transfer station, you have to pay more because we pay for the hauling from the transfer station.
Then we'll take it to Lebanon.
You
can do that.
Not to recycle.
So I have three, she's first.
Hi, it's Heidi Sidley again. You said something earlier about, bringing in more revenue by bringing in neighbors and getting revenue that way. Did the committee consider, the impact of the increases in the taxes, over, 5.5% last year, 6.25%, how that's gonna impact the, economic sustainability of people wanting to come here and live in Enfield, not knowing what the future is gonna hold with the increased tax rates going up year after year, when there's no historical, precedent for that. I was just wondering if that had been discussed.
No, we have not discussed that. Yep, you.
Hi, Madeline Johnson. I have a comment and a question. I was sort of surprised to see the grant for the byways here with the cost reduction efforts. My understanding was that grant was sort of for an extra project. It's not something that is necessarily part of the budget. It's something that, we're doing with Lebanon. This is not,
Yep.
as I say, this isn't for
That's
our
fair.
operating costs.
That's fair.
Okay.
And so I'll take that responsibility. I started with the $180,000 DPW truck because that is actually saving the town money, right? And then people were like, hey, but we have other grants, and the thing exploded into listing all the grants, and so I will
This
correct
isn't
that.
money we can say, hey, we'll spend this
Yes,
to cut.
that
the
is a fair
grass. It's
statement.
for that project, which is something, it's like the money your grandmother gives you at Christmas isn't the same as your salary.
Correct.
Anyway, and the other question I had was a little bit of a corollary of what Heidi has said, which and what Jean has said about the number of people who can't pay their taxes. Has anybody studied the relationship between the rise in taxes and the number of people who will then not be able to pay? And again, what that will do, is it going to snowball? Is it a vicious cycle? Then we end up with more land, which of course is cost for us then to deal with, to say nothing of the time it takes away from other things to figure out what to do with that. Has anybody looked at the relationship with that? And as Heidi says, a town that has been sort of considered a working, where workers live in Enfield, but if workers can't afford to live here, how does this go with the constantly raising taxes?
Tax collector know that? What the revenue, what those numbers are?
Can you answer that?
Well, so each time we look all the time at finances, but we often, on the quarter, we get a little teeny printout, which we all stare at, that has a nice thing called percentages that we don't want to rely on. But in this case, we do. So the percent of people who don't pay their taxes is very, very low. It's somewhere in the 3% range. And to be quite fair to everyone in this room, there are people in our town who have never once paid their tax bill in full to date. They are your neighbors. You are subsidizing them. They speak in meetings. So I want you to understand that those people have made the choice. They'll keep themselves just barely caught up. That's a choice, right? It's not that everybody's got this $400,000 debt, which sounds like a lot of money. We're only allowed to do something about it after 3 years. So it's not like we're not wondering and waiting. You take 3 years worth of debt for people who repeatedly don't pay their taxes. And it's not like our folks just sit in the office and hope it doesn't work. We've talked as a select board many, many times about how do we help our neighbors? How do we talk to them? Do we refer them to human services, which we do? Do we give them reminders? Sometimes you just give them a phone call. So those things are all happening. And I know it, when you see a big number like that, you're like, oh, they must not be doing anything. But they come before the select board, you see them on the agendas. You know, and I think we want to be kind to them, but we also need to be cognizant that each time they do not pay their bill, it does impact everybody else in a small way.
And we make payment plans for them. sometimes,
Absolutely.
right? And there is an interest charge. It used to be 12%, I think it's 8%.
The
now.
state does not allow us to charge 12% anymore.
And our percentage, though we don't want anybody to not, our percentage compared to other towns is relatively low.
Yeah.
So.
Can we see every single person? And it's not one of the big issues of the town. It really isn't.
And so I'm gonna focus on, I'll get back to you, but I'll pick Bob first because someone's speaking on the.
No, we have a neighbor, and going to your issue, we have a neighbor that's never paid either their dues or their taxes on time. They've never, and they rent their house out all during the summer. It's on the lake. So how is that fair? It isn't. It's too bad we can't do 12%. I'd be all in favor of doing 18. You know, it's something that's ridiculous, and they pay right before, you know, I've actually called them sometimes, said, hey, you know, you're going to tax deed, and they're like, oh, okay, we'll pay. But all the time they're late. It really pisses everybody off.
And, you know, and we have to go by the state laws. You know, we don't make up the system.
Yeah.
Right. You're right.
Gentleman in the back.
Dave Stewart, Fort Hill. But to the tax and the people on the lake, probably a lot of them are non-residents, frankly. I think they ought to have a vote. They pay taxes, they should have a vote at town meeting.
Yeah.
No taxation without representation.
We could choice.
Number two, I'm gonna call out her names, but I see a lot of people in positions of making decisions here who were here when these buildings were approved. And of course, we had town meeting and it was voted in. We're not a lot of people there, and that's not their fault. It's the fault of the people who weren't there. But the town officials proposed this to the town. They pushed it, they promised it. And here we are, and couldn't foresee that prices are gonna go up? Wages are gonna have to go up? The seller's gonna go up? And now we're stuck here, and we're talking about cutting services? You're at time. It was a bad decision. This might be Monday morning quarterbacking, but I voted against that. I spoke out against it. And for one thing, the library was supposed to raise the money to pay for their library. That was years ago, and it never happened. And that's a large part of this. And maybe we could just pick one thing or scale it down. We started with the school. And that thing was a much bigger project than it needed to be. That's a fact that I heard directly from someone very high up in the school. Says, yes, we a little overdid it. And we were told by some people, well, if you can't afford that in your taxes, then be happy that this school will make your property more valuable. And so you'll be able to sell and get out. That's the kind of attitude that I've seen all too prevalent in this town and this region. And you're not looking out for the small people who are working, trying to make ends meet, making tough decisions. It would have been a tough decision to decide maybe to scale back those buildings. It's too much for this town. And now I would much rather pay our town employees a really good wage because they're working class people like most of us in this town. And I'm happy to do that. And I was always proud to pay my taxes because the roads have always been maintained in this town. That's what the budget committee always aimed at, was maintaining services and maintaining infrastructure. And I think we've overdone it quite a bit. And I still see the same people in the position of power here.
Thank you.
I'd like to see them go. And that's all I have to say. I don't have any questions.
Thanks.
Brian Pulley, I've got a question for you. You've been harping on the services that should be cut, should be done by town meeting or the voters. how about you give us a summary of all the damn services you do provide? But we hear about a few of them and what they cost. But what about all these other smaller ones that are sort of buried in there, like the sports committee? Do we really need that as a service? Do we need all the other things? We have no idea what each individual service provides and what it costs us. So how do you expect us to make a sensible decision at town meeting or whatever it is, where we make a decision about cutting stuff? It's fine to say, oh, let's cut police force 10%. Okay, tell us something about the police force. They're there, but we don't know what it costs, all the other ancillary things. Can that be like put online so everybody can have a look at it?
Yep, so, good
The
idea.
budget's there.
Yeah, so the budget's there, right? But it's like this.
Yeah.
So I, unless anybody else on the budget committee disagrees, I could make my spreadsheet easier to understand because it's still complicated today.
One sheet.
And I can put it online and you can essentially see every department. And every department, you'll be able to see the wage, the benefit, the operating costs, the debt, the total. You'll see what it was budgeted for last year, what is budgeted for this year. And then you can actually see what the dollar amount is in every department, and you'll see for each department what percentage are they of the total budget. And again, it doesn't give you everything you want, but you'll get a better idea. And I didn't think to go into it because I thought this was too many numbers, but I can give you more numbers, and I think that would be useful. And so some people already have it because they've asked for it. I'll clean it up because it's still kind of hard to read and you have to understand everything, and we can put it online. I have no problem with that.
That's not the question I was asking.
I know, but
What I want to know is what is the objective of each of those services we're getting, what they cost, and what benefits we get.
right. And so the only comment I'll add is, I think everybody knows what the director of the fire department is and the police department, and DPW. And so most of the departments are gonna make a lot of sense. And you'll see that, yes, there's some small ones in there. And I would say reach out to the town manager for now, but we don't have a detailed description of what the purpose of each department is, and that is a fair statement. Gentleman in the back, and then you're next.
First off, my wife and I moved here a little less than 3 years ago. We're both retired with our fixed income. I think a lot of people here can voice that you see your taxes go up. When we first moved here, taxes were reasonable. Now all of a sudden we're seeing 30% increase in the budget, town budget in 3 years. We're seeing taxes going up 13% in 2 years. It's a real hardship. And somebody else mentioned how inflation is also difficult because everybody sees it every time they go to the grocery store. I agree with the gentleman to my right here saying, I look at these two building projects. Total cost is almost double the total cost of our budget. I don't know if there's something that can be looked at to scale those back. Because that's what we look at how much that's taken an impact on this budget, and it's huge. And we're a small town, and I don't know if we can afford two big projects like that. And I really think it needs to be looked hard at. Maybe we can drop one, or maybe we can share services with other towns. Get creative, and because right now it's a lot of people are hurt. And I would also suggest that I don't know how much money you were saying was going to be taken out of the unassigned fund. But because people are going through hardship, I would suggest that you take more out of it to reduce the amount of taxes that are increasing. And I have a spreadsheet here of the budget expenses and actual expenses. And I have to commend the town because it looks like we're way under budget each year. And like last year was almost $500,000 under budget. Where does that money go? Does that go into the unassigned fund? So if it does, then I would say, looking at the current budget, it looks like we're gonna be saving about $500,000 again, if you continue the trend you have. And that much money, an additional money taken out of the unassigned fund to help reduce the taxes.
The $500,000 got spent on land that didn't get voted on by the town to build this municipal facility. And again, being a realtor, $500,000 for the 3 acres that we bought, given the assessment of the 6 acres with the building. Given what Lebanon has over 100 acres on Route 4, I know we can't build in Lebanon, but that's for 1.2 million. We bought 3.3 acres for 500,000. Help me understand that.
Why didn't we use the land the town already owns?
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
Get control.
I think, this is something that all went through town meeting. It was-
$500,000 of
Could you
spending. did not
please
go through
give
town
me the
meeting.
opportunity to speak as you were given the opportunity? So this went through town meeting. It was a super majority of voters who approved it. The money, the $500,000 did not come from unassigned fund balance. It came from CIP. It was run through DRA. So we need to be very careful about not telling the truth to our neighbors.
What
here.
is CIP?
Capital Improvement Program. And so this, and questions like that make me nervous because when someone spouts off what they believe are facts and then they don't know how the town runs, we really have to be careful about what we're telling our neighbors. Because this is very, very important we get this right. So that $500,000, we haven't gotten to the warrant articles yet tonight. Dimitri's gonna go through them. We went through them last night. We take from the unassigned fund balance to offset as a choice to help lower the tax rate, which is something we're doing this year. But it's not a big slush fund in the sky, and none of us like paying more taxes. I think if we could agree on one thing in this room, it's that nobody likes adulting because paying taxes isn't fun. So go ahead, Ed.
I also just want to clarify, if you take money from unassigned tax or unassigned fund balance to buy down the tax rate and pay less, what you're doing is shifting that tax increase to next year. You're not reducing taxes, you're shifting it to next year. It's like taking money out of your savings account to pay the electric bill. Next month, you're gonna still have to pay the electric bill and it comes back. So just to do that doesn't work. If we take it like we've proposed for most of this, not all of it, we did buy down a little bit and we'll work hard to find places where we can soften that. But if we can take it to do one-time projects, those one-time projects don't come back again. So that's really what we tried to do to bring the tax rate down.
Gentleman in the doorway, you had your hand up earlier.
Yeah, I got a question. I see a lot of wasted money with the road crew. I see 6 guys driving around doing absolutely nothing. I see them trimming trees. 6 guys to do this. They're trying to cut the trees at a 14, 18, 25, 30 feet in the air.
Do you have a question for the budget committee?
Is that-
Who's speaking?
Yeah, please. Why don't you step into the room so that we can see?
Come into the room, please.
And then there's, I see they bought this $10,000.
Could you come into the room, please?
Yeah.
Come in so we can see you and.
Right here.
What's your name, sir?
Bought $10,000 for a leaf blower that they run up and down the road at least once a day on Oak Hill Road. Maybe twice. Blowing
So-
nothing out of the ditches.
And so I understand your concerns, but what,
There's a lot of money wasted. I see, last spring, I watched these 2 guys driving around a truck, same amount of gravel in the
Sorry,
back of their truck. filled
I'm
hot.
sorry, but your discussion
And
is not
never-
helpful.
That truck was never.
Thank you. So who else has a question? And so
Just to follow up on the landfill and recycling. Is it a multi-year contract that we're signing? 'Cause when I look at, right, so the 150,000 that we've been at, almost had this maintained, and now we're in a new 100,000 more, but we should expect for the next 5 years that stays the 240,000?
So I believe there's provisions in the contract for those to slightly increase, but
Yeah.
Ed would have to
But they're
comment.
incremental and small.
Right.
Few
Yes,
percent.
so a big jump shouldn't happen.
Can I add just a little bit? So when we did the original trash contract, so I'm a supply chain manager by trade, and so I tend to deal a lot in the market. When we did the original contract, it actually wasn't a great contract. We were using the money we were making on recycling to lower our costs, which looked great, except the money we were actually getting paid wasn't as good as it could have been. Fast forward to COVID and China not taking our stuff, all of a sudden it looked fantastic, which is, you're absolutely correct. It went level. And then as soon as the contract came, Casella was like, no way, because they're losing money hand over fist on us, right? So we agreed to an adder, which is built right into the contract, which is market it's based, is it? cost?
Yeah, that's one change too. The cost will increase, but they also would not, they would not re-sign at a set recycling rate. It's a rate plus market value.
Yeah.
So, and that's what happened. They got caught a few years ago with a bunch of towns locking in a rate.
Yeah.
And then they had to eat the cost difference and.
So questions? So you have had your hand up for a while and then you're next because you haven't spoken yet.
Heidi Sidley, does the town have any data on the retirees and people that are on fixed incomes and the impact that this is gonna create on them and their inability to be able to pay these increases? Is there any data or has it been reviewed or looked at?
Personal
No,
information.
that's personal information. We look at what we have. We look at median incomes. We do some of that. And then we also look at the amount of assistance applications and things we get. And then we look at the percentage of taxes paid and where we're at. So we continue to look at that and keep costs as low as we can.
Hi, I'm Sharon Buffet of Enfield. You'll bear with me. I have some concerns to express and I will end with a question. So, one thing we haven't talked about, the population in Enfield is increasing. People are not moving here to pay more taxes, okay? So that's one concern. I'm concerned that of the budget, let me back up 1 second, Dimitri. You did a fabulous job tonight in putting together what you did and explaining it to us. You really gave me a picture. So thank you for your hard work. Thank you for everybody who worked on this budget. Thank you all for being here. Dimitri, I got concerned because I saw, my God, 153% of this is those building projects. And I thought to myself, we haven't even broken ground on those building projects. I'm having some stuff happen at my house. And I know how much my costs increase just by things I didn't expect. And you're talking about 2 new buildings or a building renovation in a new building. So I'm sure those costs are gonna go up. Dimitri, you said, help me if I misquote you, our spending is bigger than what we are budgeting.
On the operating side, last year, yes. So operating costs are everything in town that we're spending money on that is not labor, benefits, or debt. So I also need to correct you one thing. It's not 150% increase in our budget. That is the increase in the debt service. The budget itself, the general one, increased 13.6% or 13.7%.
But that impacts.
The impact of the buildings is large. It is 48% of the total increase. It was voted for at town meeting. I know certain people don't disagree with it. I know a supermajority plus 1 voted yes, and therefore a lot of people voted no. But it was passed at town meeting, and it is what it is.
And that's the total lease payment. It's not like construction costs on top of that are gonna.
That's the loan payment.
That's the loan payment.
Yeah, you said lease.
Okay, yeah.
I'm almost done. Going forward, I understand, Ed, what you said, that we're taking money from the undesignated fund balance to try to lower the taxes for this year, but it's like we're borrowing from next year. And we can't keep doing that. I mean, so that's a solution this year. I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned that we have to turn to that for a solution. Dimitri, you said that we're faced with either increase our revenue or spending. Is that correct?
Spend less, right?
Spend less.
Spend less or make more money.
And one thing, people talked about, land development. I don't expect that we'll see the benefit of land development for 2 or 3 years by the time those projects are fully built out and people are living in them and taxes are coming. And we don't know what increases they will bring to this town in addition, from the residents living there. I'm very concerned in trying to look for solutions that we're even questioning it affecting employees. Nobody wants to do that. And that just shows me like, oh my God, we're really dire here. So here's my question. You know, I suggest that the elephant in the room, and it was mentioned by a gentleman here, maybe one other person as well, is that we refigure the choices that we're making on the building projects. I'm not saying to scrap them. I know that, you know, we have a loan service so that, you know, we're already committed. But I think there needs to be, you know, sitting down with some hard choices about, okay, this is how much money we have. We don't have an unlimited amount of money. And what do we absolutely have to have in these buildings? What is most economical in these buildings? And how, when we have more money down the road, how could we add to these buildings or improve upon these buildings?
I understand your concern, but the budget has 2 loan payments for loans we took out, and beyond that, the budget committee really has no involvement in the buildings. We have 2 loans, we signed on the dotted line. The annual payment for those loans was in the presentation. Those numbers are in the budget. It's like your mortgage. Once you sign the dotted line, you have a mortgage payment. And those mortgage payments are essentially in our budget. And if I have that's it. There's nothing the budget committee can do at that point. Anybody else have a question?
Thank you.
Gentleman in the back.
Yeah, Pete Hugo, couple things. Number one is thank you for, saying that maybe we should have a vote, late people. I've been here for 16 years now. My name's Peter Hugo. And, I love it here in Enfield. It's the greatest place in the world. But that being said, I don't think, you know, I think last year or the year before when we voted on the buildings, I don't think that building vote was a big vote. There weren't a lot of people there. And from what I gathered also is that if you would listen to some of the other, we can't vote, but maybe listen and understand that if I went to that meeting and I can't vote, but I can say what I want. Again, I'm a person here and paying taxes. That being said, forget about that. Now, what I've been told, correct me if I'm wrong, that we are probably one of the only towns in New Hampshire that is losing residents. Do we have any information on how many residents we have had in the last 5 years? Are we going up or are we going down? I've been told that by numerous people that no,
The last 4 censuses,
we've gone down.
yeah.
My question to you is, what are we doing to encourage people to come to Enfield? Now, well, wait a minute. Listen, you're gonna get me on the school. I love the school, whatever they did for the school. I'm a teacher. I'm very happy with the school. But that being said, again, we're raising our taxes. Our tax rates have gone up tremendously in the last 3 years. Now, what are we doing we came to a meeting, last year about our house. And one of the people that came, a builder came and wanted to make, wanted to create a building. Well, what are you gonna build? We're gonna build high income apartments. Not low income or income where we could bring in some people that might want to come and pay some taxes, but high income. We're not helping the community. So again, with that being said, what are we doing, and this is rhetorical, what are we doing to bring people into Enfield? My final question is, being an educator and having to deal with budgets, the school board came to me as the athletic director and said, I want you to cut 5% of your operating budget. Okay, they came to me. I'm the person that was responsible for that, and they go to all the other department heads. I don't understand why we have to go to the selectmen. I think Ed would be a great person to say, Ed, this is your job. Cut the budget by 5%. Case closed. I don't have a problem with that. And why we have to go to this person or that person to get that done.
So I'll add a comment on that. We've been trimming the budget year after year after year, and I think we're at a point where we have to make not little choices, but tougher choices on what we're not going to do. And those discussions just saying trim your budget 5%, it's gonna involve some harder decisions because people have been cutting back left and right. And we're seeing that in the operating cost exceeding what we budget, right? People continue to operate the town the way we do, and we're simply not budgeting enough for operating costs. Yes, we are underrunning our staffing, and that is what's giving us a surplus. Heck, if we didn't have that, we'd be in even bigger trouble. I think the town has to have a discussion about the service levels, right? And so just the same way the budget committee doesn't get to change the building project, it was voted on, passed, and we're gonna pay the bills for the loans. I think the service level needs to broader discussion, not just solely by Ed deciding what he's gonna cut, because he may cut the transfer station and then everybody's gonna be in uproar that they can't dump their trash. And so, any additions?
Yeah, I would just like to note that one thing to keep in mind is we do our best as a state and as a town to give people a voice in the operation of the town. All of the people at this table on the budget committee have been elected by you folks. Okay, it's an elected position. The Board of Selectmen, and there are now 5 of us, are elected by you folks. No, we can't come to each and every one of you and say, what should we do? That's why we are democracy and we vote. Now I've lost my pen.
John, can I ask you something then? You're the elected Board of Selectmen, you guys are the elected budget committee. We have the town manager. We're asking what hard choices have been made, and the answer was, you guys tell us what to cut. We had some of the best department heads running this town. I love what they do to the roads.
Especially DPW.
I'm telling you, it's fantastic. We got some really smart people in the room. That's what your guys are supposed to be doing. Tell us what hard choices you're making, because the only thing I'm hearing is it's going up this year and it's gonna go up next year. So do you want me to make the hard choice? Or who's gonna make the hard choices? I'm not hearing anybody saying we're gonna do something except kick the can down the road to next year.
All right, thanks for your comment. I understand. So I'll focus on 2 people who haven't spoken yet. So Dave Buffet
What's
first.
the answer?
Can I answer that?
What, oh, on the, yes, please answer.
Yeah. So I'm the chair of the select board right now. We rotate, so it's not a big deal, other than I'm a member. And we do make hard choices every year. So they start out with a budget, they start out with things, say strategically they want to do, and then they pare them back. And you're like, we're not gonna start that this year, right? And we do that exercise each year. If you come to regular select board meetings, I could tell you all night long, a long list. It's not what the budget committee does, but it's what we do. We talk about level of services. We talk about, do you go out when we're gonna plow, this much, or do we wait until people scream at us at this much, right? And so those are all the kind of conversations we had. You heard Dimitri explain that we actually overran the operations portion because we have been paring back. We have been trying to be very careful. And so the reason we're asking for ideas, right, is because we have a lot of smart people here. We're hoping through this community cooperation that we come up with something that isn't going to gut our services. I haven't seen anybody come up with a big number, but I'm gonna not call anybody out by name, but I've had one person who actually has given a couple suggestions that are small. And I agree, the small things add up over time, right? That's the kind of constructive, like, hey, could we consider the trash? So I'll pick on Jean on the trash, because I think, Jean, no, and that's a nice pick on, right? Because it's something we can really have a conversation on. So there is a great constructive conversation that we can have as a group. Like, would we be willing to drive to Lebanon? So we are constantly having those conversations, and you can call us, you can email us. We do write you back. We do listen to you in meetings. We have public comment. We spend a lot of time doing public comments. It's not required by law, but Enfield runs a very open meeting. And so I want you guys to know that throughout the year, when you see something that's interesting, these are all things that you could say, hey, Kate, I really wish you would consider, and it might not be my area of expertise, right? Someone might call me and say, I heard they're thinking about paving XYZ road and I'm just not sure, and here's why. That's a good piece of constructive feedback. So I think we can't say we don't do those activities throughout the year. It would take us hours to list them. So I want you to know that we are doing it, but you can be part of it.
That's why we're here.
And so I'll say one thing to that. Everybody's here tonight, right? But people are not at the meetings that we have throughout the year. And we don't hear that feedback then. And there's a few people that attend on a regular basis, right? And I'm gonna call out Jean again. And so, no, you're not. And so, as she knows, we have communicated back and forth outside of these meetings, like, hey, what do you think about this? You know, should we do something about this? I'm like, yeah, I was thinking about that too, but you know, that cost actually has a revenue on it that's bigger. And so getting rid of that service would actually increase tax rates. Like, oh, let's try something else. And so, you know, it's not like if you contact people offline, they will ignore you. And so we've been taking the comb at all those things. I think we have to look at some of the bigger ones. And, you know, again, I'm gonna sound like a broken record. I would rather, even if it's a small majority at town meeting saying yes. I'm gonna go on a limb here. Hopefully Roy doesn't kill me. So, you know, yes, let's not have 24/7 police service, right? But what I don't want us to do is the small committee, the budget committee deciding in a meeting where 5 people are present, right, from the town deciding to go do that. And in a town meeting, everybody is shocked. Hey, I tried to call the police and nobody showed up for X amount of time. What happens? Like, well, it was in your budget, but you didn't know about it. So I want us to have those discussions. I'm gonna try to focus on people who haven't spoken yet, because otherwise, I don't know if there's a time limit, but I don't want to be here until midnight. Dave?
Dave Buffet, Maple Street. We have a extremely local comparison in the school district budget that was just passed with a 3.2% increase. And that's the first increase in 4 years. They have had 1 year that they actually decreased their budget and 2 0 increases. Now granted, they don't have the debt service of 2 buildings, but don't get me going on that. But they have all the other costs, personnel, equipment, facilities, and they're doing it. You know, we should be talking to Scott Sanborn, who's chair of that, of their budget committee, and they have been doing it. There've been some members, here tonight that have been on the budget committee for the school. You know, I'm not an expert in buildings or budgets or anything like that, but I can see the bottom line and see that we're not doing a good job of it. Thank you.
I want to address a couple speakers ago, the gentleman back there. So as we were going through budgets and so on, so maybe one evening we're looking at what the proposed police budget is. It becomes pretty clear to you that the process you're talking about was, they didn't just give us a budget or give Ed the budget who gave it to us. There was a back and forth and there was a trimming down, and that happened, I think, across all departments.
Yeah.
So it is happening. And that's how we arrived where we are now. And I feel as budget committee, our job is to look out for the tax rate, yes, but also the services that go with that tax rate. And our goal was to maintain services, because we all know you may not use one service, but your neighbor uses it all the time. And I feel like what we presented is a fair budget. I'm not saying I love it, because I'm going to get a huge increase as well. And when we voted on those 2 big projects, I knew when I got here, I wasn't gonna like it. And here we are. But I do like the idea that our fire and our police and our ambulance are gonna have a facility they can function better in and maybe attract more volunteers. I think that's kind of priceless. And I'm gonna figure out how I'm going to support that, because I do feel we have good employees. I do feel they try to be careful. For instance, we had somebody in the highway department that really got on it by pretty much on his own, applied for a grant and got that $180,000. Most towns can't say that about their employees. I want to keep those employees because they're doing a good job for us. And to say I want to cut 5% or 1% or whatever, it really, there are things that we have obligations for. That's not going to come out of those obligations. And where it is going to come out of, I think we're not going to like, because it's going to be services. And we have to decide what are those going to be. And so when you're thinking of a cut, you need to do a little research, as I think our town manager has, our budget committee has done some, our selectmen have, and you have to decide, what are you willing to give up? At what cost? And is it worth it? For instance, we looked at the trash. And then we were like, all right, so maybe we cut that. Maybe everybody takes the trash to the dump. All right, now the dump needs to be bigger. It needs to have personnel for more hours. And so on. And so then when we got weighing it, we're like, actually, this is the better choice for us. And we've done that on a lot of these things. And it's a hard message, but it's the reality of it. And I fully support this budget, even though I know it's going to be difficult, because I think it's what we can do to keep what we have.
Just to follow up on your point, I agree with a lot of what you said, but I really don't think it's the individual residents' job to advise us, the elected officials, on what things that they want to cut. I think we need to hear and listen to these people, and it's clear that they're not happy with last year's tax increase or this year's tax increase or potentially next year's tax increase. That is what they are telling us. I think that we as a budget committee and board of select people and Ed need to listen to that and go back, like I've been saying, and try to do better and say, okay, here are the tough choices that you mentioned. This is what it means. Are you okay with that? And then it goes to the vote. I think we're hearing it. I think we're hearing it, and we're hearing it loud and clear. And it's not their job to say, cut the police. It's somebody else's job that gets elected.
I will disagree with that in somewhat, because I feel like it's very easy to say, let's cut $200,000.
I agree.
Okay, it's very easy to say that.
Yep.
But you need to do that knowing where you think that needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there have been little cuts, bigger cuts, and we, like I said, some things that we can't cut because we have legal obligations for, or the law requires. And I feel like part of this is an education too, because when you say, well, I want you to cut, this particular line item, that gives somebody here a chance, or the selectmen a chance to say, but we can't for these reasons. That's why that's still there. And I haven't heard anybody, even on budget committee, saying, let's cut this, specifically or whatever, including you.
Can I make a suggestion right now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think that we should freeze all hires. Do not fill any vacant positions. I think we should talk about not having a 24/7 police force. I think we need to talk about that. That's where I would start. Hard choices.
Let's vote on it.
Hi, Dan Regan. I live on Montpelier. And first of all, I want to say thank you to the budget committee. I thought you guys did a great job. Thank you also to the select board. I've been paying taxes in the town for about 32 years, but only lived here back again since June. But I have found the select board to be very receptive. They listen well, and I think they're available to us. And I think they do a great job as well. To me, as I listen, there's three things that happened that caused us to be in this position. One was the two buildings, one was the increase in insurance, and one was Casella. we can't control Casella or the increase in insurance. That happened. We can look next year, send out an RFP, et cetera. The two buildings, we went through the process as it's designed. We thought we needed new buildings for a number of reasons. The select board kicked that around. They got input from the public. And then the public went to a meeting and voted, as the chief pointed out at a recent budget meeting, with a super majority. And said, yes, we want it. So we made tough choices. The tough choices we made put us in this position. If we didn't make those choices, we wouldn't be in this position. So now I respectfully disagree with you, Brad. We cannot let the pendulum swing and start cutting things to the point that I call for the police and they don't work on Tuesdays. That just, it can't happen that way. So we need to be smart. We can't just go from one end to the other. We need to work together and think of solutions, constructive solutions. So again, thank you to the budget committee. Appreciate what you've done.
Gibson Crystal Lake Road. I'm not gonna beat a dead horse. A lot of what's gonna talk about has already been raised, but I'm gonna bounce something back on the people in this room. We did a quick calculation after town meeting last year. It's like 2 or 3% of the total population taxpayer. Well, I showed it at the town meeting. So if you don't like what you see in the budget, which thank you for your presentation, again, very well done. I don't agree with the tax increases for a number of reasons, but it was voted on by a very small percentage of taxpayers in this town. So if you don't like what's going on here, then you better start beating the bushes and getting your fellow neighbors out there to come to town meeting and vote on the warrant articles. So we as taxpayers bear a certain responsibility for what's going on right now, because we haven't showed up in the numbers that we needed to really say 2 or 3% of the town decides on what happens for everybody else. To me, that is not democracy. It's an opportunity missed.
So you haven't spoken yet, right? Okay, yes.
Joan Krug. I know it's always hard to cut and we've got some big expenses. Has anybody looked though at, putting a moratorium on or freezing any new spending? And what comes to mind for me is the Johnston Drive that a lot of people want. To me, that's right now, that is not a good idea. So I'm just curious if that has come up at all.
So I know Johnston Drive is not in this budget.
No, it's not.
And so I'll let Ed comment.
But they're
on
still
that.
talking about it.
No, because it's not in the budget.
There's a recommendation out there. It's very low cost. I know we shouldn't be adding any cost, but that's something the select board is gonna be deciding in the near future, as soon as we get the legal review back, which is almost done. So once that's done, yeah, it'll be something that the select board needs to decide what we're gonna do with that property. We have the Methodist Hill property too, that will be decided really soon. You know, those are a couple pieces of property that we can do something with or get rid of. That'll be a decision there. So please come weigh your opinion.
So I don't know if I'm allowed to do this. I'm gonna look at Kate, see if I'm allowed to do this, but at 9 o'clock, I would like to move on.
The person who knows the most
Yeah.
about whether you're allowed to do it is actually Ed.
So at 9 o'clock, I
Thank
would
you.
like to move on. That's in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I would like to give opportunities to people who have not yet spoken. If you want to say something, otherwise I will.
I'm Steve Patton. I've long said that we need to save a little bit where we can. One place I think we can save some money is to stop with these surveys or studies of roads, bridges, and salaries. I know that Jim Taylor a few years ago put together a program where we were going to pay certain roads every so often, and that seemed to work. But I think paying outsiders to tell us what to do is not exactly what I'd like to see.
Yep. So we
It's
can
a help.
consider that. Yes,
Hi, it's Madeline Johnson again. You brought up a few possible hard choices, 24/7 police, the garbage situation. We keep hearing, well, but it doesn't make that much difference, or it comes out somewhere else. So I'd like Dimitri and Ed to wave a magic wand and tell us what would make a difference. Aside from whatever, we can't do anything about the debt service, but tell us, because you're right, we can have an input, but we also need information. Tell us what would make a difference.
Didn't you say, Dimitri, that you would ask, the board would ask, or put together a schedule of services and roughly what they cost so that people can have that information? I think you said that earlier.
we can. So
Yeah. More or less, you talked about giving out your spreadsheet, but I think what they're looking for is a schedule of
well, I think they're looking for
police department, if we cut this, it'll save us X. Fire department, if we cut this part, it'll save us X, that sort of thing.
I want you to make your magic wand. You can do anything. You can tell me, we're gonna put a high-rise apartment building here for every economic group,
So,
wealthy,
here, I'll-
whatever. Tell me
I'll
what we
bite.
can do. We just keep
There
hearing.
is no magic wand.
No, hold on, I'm gonna bite.
No Easter bunny.
Blue sky thinking.
Thank you. No, I'm gonna bite. So this is, I may regret this, but I'm gonna bite.
I personally won't make you regret it.
So I honestly feel, I'm with Bob, we have to focus on the revenue side. There's these developments that I think would add value because we all know housing is expensive and difficult in the entire state, right? And so I'm just hoping and praying that we can just finish Shed Street. Wish we had done it, 20 years ago, and it would have been generating revenue for the last 20 years. And we can put some smaller houses on there that are affordable that then generate revenue. Great. I'm hoping the same thing happens at Maple Street, right? And so in my personal opinion, I think it would be helpful if the town changed their zoning to make it easier to bring in more affordable housing and more revenue, rather than trying to say, I'm gonna go a limb too here, Roy's gonna kill me. Could we reduce by one police officer? Yes. Is it gonna make a huge difference? It will help a little bit, yes. But hold on, let me finish.
No, I have statistics for you.
Okay. And so, right, could we do that? Probably yes. Now, could we cut the police department in half? No. Right? And so that's why I have my opinions and I'll voice them at town meetings. And so, I'll rely on Roy to make, a counter argument, and I'm sure he would, and he will in about just 1 minute here. But I think this town needs to focus on making it easier for people to actually make improvements in town.
Yeah.
And change the way we do housing in town and put in more affordable housing. Period.
And the state is moving in that direction. ADUs are being made more and more possible throughout. I think the planning board is probably looking at all these things. They are revising planning regulations. So these are things that are happening.
I want to give Roy a chance to counter.
So I'll give you some real numbers on it, but this is the thing. So we got rid of a police officer position, which I'm not advocating. So we have one opening right now. So that position would be roughly between benefits and salary be a savings about $100,000 a year. Okay, so Richard, what would that for the tax rate be? About 5 cents?
Keep talking all.
Okay. No, we need 7 officers to be 24-hour coverage, right? Now, our average response time, we're 24 hours, is just over 2 minutes in town because we're out there, right? So we go to all medical calls, right? And we also respond to all law enforcement calls. So in Enfield, in an average of about 2.5 minutes, there's an officer who is advanced first aid certified and all these other stuff at your door. There to help you at 3 o'clock in the morning to respond. We go down to 6 officers, we have to go on call. Average, when we're on call, the average time is from 1 in the morning, you know, anywhere between, depending on vacations and this and that, let's just call it 1 in the morning to we have to be back out there at 5 o'clock in the morning, because that's when traffic is 14,000 cars a day are rolling through Enfield. Okay, between 1 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, our response time is 18 minutes. Okay, because that officer has to get up, he has to get dressed, he has to respond. Now, what's the 100,000 to the taxpayer cost?
So it's 16 cents per thousand in value per year.
Okay, so
if you're,
less than $10, when you're at 2 o'clock in the morning, your loved one is having a medical emergency or a mental health emergency or something like that, an officer's at your door in approximately 2.5 minutes or 18 minutes. That's what you gotta weigh, what the value is to each individual citizen.
and this is why I want that to be said at town meeting,
Yes.
where the audience is the biggest, and not the budget committee just like, oh yeah, look, we can reduce the tax rate by 16 cents per thousand for the total of what? $16 a year per 100,000 value. I'll take the 2-minute response time because I know our ambulance is not fast. The first person at my house is not even going to be the fire department that lives a mile down the road because it's a volunteer one. It's going to be a police officer showing up.
Now, Roy Holland, Oak Hill Road. I'd like to add that, somebody said earlier, compared us to the school budget and the 2.3%. We are 7.6, right?
So
we are well in line with all the other towns surrounding us in our operating budget increase. We can't, and the one thing I want to kind of hold out there is, you know, whether you voted for the 2 buildings or you didn't vote for the 2 buildings, that vote passed. Those buildings, the loans have been taken, they're being built, right? We can't handcuff, you know, our town budget to those 2 increases to the point now, whereas are we going to, somebody had said the pendulum, right? We shouldn't swing that pendulum. Now we're talking about artificially decreasing our budget, which is in line with what a lot of other towns' budget is going up to decrease services because of, you know, the 2 buildings.
In fact, and I'll correct for that is, if you don't consider the 2 new buildings, our increase is half of the average of the other 23 towns that we got data from.
So our town isn't doing different stuff than other towns. We're not adding a whole bunch of services that other towns aren't adding. We are trying to provide the same level of service that what we know is department heads, and I can speak for, you know, I work with all our department heads, we all work together, that are expected of our residents, and that's the budget that was presented tonight, you know.
And I would like to commend the department heads for not just running the surplus to 0. Right? Because I work in government too, and at the end of the year, it goes, oh, spend it now because we won't have it next year. This town is not doing that, right? And we don't want to promote that behavior because then there would be no surplus, right? And so I want to say that. So who has not yet spoken?
You have 2 questions online.
And we have 2 questions online. So we'll have that one, the 2 questions online, and then Rhythm.
Yes, Bill Chase, Melinda Road. I know this is the wrong time to bring it up, and I hate to stir up trouble. But I do have a question. It seems like, from what you said, if we didn't have the 2 buildings as part of what's going on in the community right now, it would dramatically reduce our financial problems. And I realize we entered into some agreements. We've taken out loans, we've done different things. As a business owner, sometimes I make bad mistakes. What I have to do is I have to look at the cost of getting out of those mistakes or continuing. Is there any possibility at this point to reevaluate that and scale down some of that project and maybe take a hit, but reduce the overall impact on the taxpayers? Because a lot of people can't keep doing this. And nothing has been said that's going to change the direction we're going. So is there any way we can put the brakes on for a minute and reevaluate it and scale it down? Get within a budget that people can live with? maybe it's too late, but.
Well said.
Very much, yeah.
That's what we're
Good
all
question.
hoping for.
I mean, I don't know that we can scale it down much. The public safety building's the one that's not fully under contract and already being demolished, like Whitney Hall. But I would also encourage you to look back at the shape of the buildings that those people are living in that are mold ridden and, you know, they're horrible buildings. So we need to build something. And we've pared that building down about as small as we can go to fit the services that we have.
Is the intent to sell the properties that currently have the current buildings on them?
Yes. As soon as we get out of them, we will go to the select board and talk about selling or repurposing those buildings, but you know, we don't really need them, so I think a lot of them are on the block to sell them.
And then to put housing in because they are in town?
It depends what they decide to do with them.
Lindsay?
Oh, their number one.
Sorry.
Sealy.
Sealy. Did you unmute?
Elisa, can you unmute?
No, she has to unmute herself.
You can unmute, you can.
Sealy.
No, it's an S.
I don't have an unmute.
Yes, just unmute the microphone to the right.
Yeah, there's no option.
No.
So
There
Lindsay?
you go. She's good.
She goes.
Oh,
Steely, you need to unmute.
You need a little sign.
Sure.
she can hear us.
Maybe we can go on to Lindsay while.
So Lindsay, you wanna go while we try to get?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep. Oh.
Yep. Can you just hear wanted me? to say that, Billy's now unmuted. Can I be heard?
Yeah. So
Yes.
Sealy, go ahead.
I've been, sitting here, you know, listening to the history and everybody, talking about the financials, and I agree with how well the budget committee did on preparing this. And it's a different way of looking at the budget. But overall, and what everybody is saying about how the housing and the voting on these buildings and so on and so forth, I think some of it is misunderstood in a way that I was, from the very beginning, stood right with this when these buildings were planned on, when they were created. And it was really the work of a group that came into town and talked to all the departments. And they were the departments that really wanted these and had a need for them. We had a new manager and that went forward. So as we went down through the whole process, it eventually got to the town to be voted on. And at that time, when they were voted on, there were very few townspeople there. I think it was a weather or something, but they've got passed it. It wasn't gone over through everybody. Whitney Hall's a different story. Whitney Hall was planned for a long time.
Do you have a question?
So I know we got a big bill and that's going. But what I want to say is that we got to pay it. And all of you are counting on the housing that you're hoping that will all be built. That's going to bring you this money. And I would be very cautious of that, because over the years it's been proven over and over and over again that that's not necessarily true. And it usually is cost.
I have a question for the committee.
Population, it usually costs the town more money. And I see you smiling, saying, no, but that's what has happened. And what part of it is, it's a school. Your taxes are you're $29 1,000. That's a lot of money. And a kid, 1,000 for You know, that's their cost. Ours is only 6 something, right?
You,
So I'm
you have 30
saying-
seconds.
It really makes a big difference. And if you're counting on putting McMansions or $1 million mansions on a lake, you're gonna do nothing but ruin the lake.
All right, thank you for your
Because
comment.
the
Lindsay,
now it's getting overbuilt.
thank you. All right, Lindsay?
Yeah, so Dimitri, great job tonight. Just 2 things, and they are not questions, but one is just that the zoning board is rewriting zoning regs. They wrote a grant to be able to do that, so people can get involved there and try to make it easier to build. As we're trying to look at ways to generate revenue, so ways to get involved. And also, we're past the point of where you can overturn a past warrant article. So the articles that were passed, and then we have to move on from that. So as people keep bringing up the 2 buildings, it's moot. And so now we go with how do we generate revenue or other things. But those warrant articles are said and done. But anyways, there is opportunities to get involved with zoning. So keep an eye out for that. Thanks.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to next topics. One thing that was proposed was to eliminate the road survey for 12,000. Does anybody in the budget committee want to make a motion to consider that?
I will.
Second. All right. Does anybody want to have discussion on eliminating the road survey?
I do not want to eliminate the road survey. I think we need that comprehensive inventory of our road system with a professional review of the quality of the roads and any work that needs to be done and any work that we can put off.
Any other input?
Why can't I road again?
So, hold on, we're not for public comment.
I would say I recommend that, and I'm with Dean. It's an actual machine that comes through and x-rays that, and the maintenance that we can learn from that and when to do maintenance and prepare for that can save money in the future. So it's an expense now for an efficiency in the future.
Excuse me, can you speak up? We've got a lot of noise back here. Yeah,
That thing turned on again?
yeah, I'm gonna turn it down again. Right at it.
Give it a second.
But it's the one, maybe that's in the.
His point was that the road survey isn't just the road agent going out looking at the roads. It's a crew that runs an x-ray machine, basically.
Well, not,
This is
yeah,
not all they do.
Yeah.
But it uses an x-ray machine or a ground penetrating radar or something to study in depth the road bed underneath.
it studies the roads and the condition, and they'll give us recommendations on not only replacement, but maintenance and things that will make them last longer for the long term.
Do you want to close the public hearing?
Oh, yeah, we're closing the public hearing, sorry.
Yeah, it's after nine.
So, okay,
So if it didn't happen till
any
next
additional
year,
discussion?
that'd be really bad.
You gotta speak loud enough for everybody to
Okay,
hear.
I said if it did not happen until next year, would that really be a bad impact on us?
I don't know that it would be a bad impact, but it's just moving
Yeah, I know.
step project.
kicking it down the
Next year,
road.
we're using undesignated fund balance this year, so it would be, do you want to use that or not? It's not, as it sits right now in the budget, it's not an impact to the tax rate, so there would be no tax rate change.
Because we're using the undesignated fund.
To pay for it.
And so we would
Cut
still
that out.
do it.
If we cut that out and didn't use it, if we weren't using undesignated funds to pay for it and we cut it out, what would we save per thousand? About 1.6 cents.
So that's the same old discussion we talked
Right,
about
so-
where we save a few pennies here, a few pennies there, and it builds up. And if we keep saying no to absolutely everything that is suggested, we're not gonna get anywhere.
Right. And so the question is, if we're gonna kick it to next year, I don't really see value in delaying it because it's not even gonna impact the tax rate. It would come out of undesignated this year or next year, right? So the question is, are we just gonna do it or are we gonna not do it at all? And so is Jim still here?
No.
Um,
I'll call the vote. Yeah, that's.
Okay.
Call the question. That too.
so, all those in favor of eliminating the road survey from the budget? Raise your hand. All those against?
Who are we missing?
Who are we missing?
Nancy.
Okay.
And you,
What?
did you vote?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
it was 4-4.
Okay.
Then what?
It failed.
We have an
It failed.
abstention.
Okay. Alright, so it's 4 in favor, 4 against, and 1 abstain, because she's not here, so it failed.
Technically, the motion fails.
Way to go.
Alright, review of the warrant. So,
Did you want to stop screen sharing and show that in?
If that's okay, I'm gonna move the select board up front.
yep, that's fine.
So that when we get to our part, we're easy to hear and see on the out. That's okay.
Dimitri, just a quick question. Only here, if you want to see the public, is this part of the discussion as well, or is it? No.
For the warrants, no. No. So you can sit listening through the warrants, but it's really just us voting on the warrants, yes or
You're gonna
no.
have to go all the way down there. You'll be fine. No, I'm sorry, no, you're honey. Yeah, it should be good. Here. Oh,
You did, but he could resign after he gets back.
Right, are we taking a 3-minute recess?
Should we?
I mean, you might as well call it since they're doing it anyways, if you want, or you can ask them to.
Take the recess.
I think it's up to me, that's what I was asking, usually when they're.
5 minutes? You guys want to do that? All right, 3-minute recess.
Thank you.
Are we muted for 3 minutes?
You guys, they're unmuting.
We're unmuting and we're starting, we're continuing the meeting. Anyway. Trying to find them.
It's what you're looking for.
All right.
The new one or the old one?
New one. Work on the new one.
So Article 2. Article 1, we don't vote on. So,
Yeah.
so Article 2,
You're sitting next to him too.
It's on the screen too, if you wanna look at that.
okay,
Thank you.
so. My brain is blank. What is the right statement?
Thank you.
Or we'll entertain the
We
motion.
need a motion.
Yes, so, anybody willing to make a motion to approve, to recommend, or to vote on, recommendation for Article 2 as written?
So moved.
Anybody second? All those in favor of recommending Article 2 as written, please raise your hand. All those against recommending Article 2 as written? Okay. Abstentions?
Sorry, I'm still catching.
The
So,
budget.
It's the budget.
Article, no, you're on the wrong page. So.
Oh.
I
was we were on the wrong one.
It's this,
Gotcha.
like Article 2.
This is basically to say whether we recommend the
Recommend the
budget
budget
that we're
or-
recommending.
Or not like this.
Yes.
That's all.
It's giving the public an idea of how many of us think this is a good budget, how many of us don't.
Right, Jim, do you have it?
I recommend the budget.
Right, so we'll do again. So all those in favor of recommending the budget as written, raise your hand. So I can get quick counts.
5, 6, 7.
All those against. All right, so 5.
Seven
What is sure? Was 7 to 2? Okay, there's 9 of us. So 7 to 2.
Shirley, what did you vote, yea or nay?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
Does the select board want to do their?
Yes, I would like to. So, bless you. So the select board, which includes John, just as a reminder for those in the room, because he's a little separated from us tonight physically, chose not to look at this article last night so that we would have the opportunity we lost the article.
I'm sorry.
That's
I'm
okay.
having an issue with seeing the screen. Can you stop sharing and restart?
Okay, so we chose not to make a recommendation last night so we could hear what everyone said. And so at this point, I would entertain a motion to recommend from the select board.
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion from the select board on recommending or not recommending as it may be?
I have a suggestion for what it may or may not be worth. My suggestion is that we consider a larger amount to come from the unassigned fund balance with this rationale. In 2024 and 2025, we will be liquidating 3 properties. We will be liquidating Methodist Hill, approximately $35,000 or so. We will be liquidating Shed Street. Various numbers are out there. Could be 75, could be more. We will also be liquidating the fire station. Estimates on that could be 250 or more. That money can be used to replace the unassigned fund balance. It might be by 225, I'll admit, not next year. So the question is, I'd like to hear a discussion from the select board, shooting that down if they feel that's the attitude, or considering it if not.
I'd like to weigh in before the discussion, just so everybody understands.
Yeah.
We got the money back from the capital reserve funds that we're looking at closing, and that number is $186,000. So there is a little money there. I'm gonna disagree, but I don't think we should use more to do it because it is moving that. Not that we can't try to find ways to offset it, but it's something to do. But I personally recommend we don't roll that whole 186 in to there from fund balance this year, so there's a portion of it that you could possibly use if you wanted to lower this. That's really what I wanted to put out there, that there's that other like 70,000 that we didn't account for a few days ago.
Am I allowed to make comments?
Just a second. And I think we're gonna have to raise our voices, everybody, because that darn blower is so loud. I'm sorry. We tried, we've got it down to low 50s and it's 77.
No, I mean, flip the switch on the blower.
So, and just to make sure everyone's on the same page, so even though we're discussing recommending a motion to recommend on Article 2, the number Ed is talking about is at the bottom of the principal balance in Article 3. The 186. It was 118 yesterday, so just.
That's not what he's talking about.
That's not what I'm talking.
No, I know he's not. Ed is what Ed referred to.
Point out that
Yes.
there's more
Okay.
there than we had talked about, and it's
Yeah.
a possibility of using to offset that.
You're saying there's an alternative.
There's another place for money instead of
Yeah.
waiting till 2025.
Yeah. I'd like to go through the select board like we usually do in order, so I'll start with Eric, because it's my tradition.
What are you asking? You asking?
So about, because Tracy made, a suggestion and he wanted to know what we think, so I think is that.
I'm not a big fan of kicking the can down the road. Some has been done to alleviate it, but it will just mean a double the increase next year, because you have to make up the 100K and whatever else happens, so. I'm generally not in favor of spending down our savings account, especially as we get close to where our limit, or well, our target is, I should say.
Okay, Alice?
I have a question. Have we gotten ourselves in trouble by doing this before? We have.
Yes.
I thought so. Okay.
A group did, we don't know what their reasoning was.
Sorry?
A budget committee and select board got into they got very low on the reserve fund.
Yeah, I feel like.
We ran it in the prior group ran it into the negative.
We don't know why that happened. or
I can
how they-
speak from
what they
some
did.
experience.
Yeah.
And the Great Recession had a great deal to do
Yes,
with it.
right.
And our determination not to let any employees go.
Right. Yeah,
That was it.
that was it. Yeah.
It's all my fault.
Oh,
No, I just wonder, should we save it for true emergency? I don't want to say it's a true emergency.
Big difference in this situation.
John, go ahead.
I agree to, don't kick the can down the road.
I feel that we've set a fund balance policy. The lower bound is 8%. We're already getting, in my opinion, dangerously close to 8%. In addition to kicking the can down the road, I am very nervous that we might go under, and then we don't know what future economy looks like, right? There's going to be some kind of market correction. We don't know what it looks like. And the reason that DRA recommends between 8% and I can't remember what the top bound is, but our target is 12. We are not at 12 and we are going back down. So I feel that for me, this is the last year I'm going to support taking money from undesignated unless there's a compelling reason to, and I can't support taking any more. So, yeah, okay, now you're public.
So I'm public now. So
For a second. you're
we're already
budgeted.
we're already taking $300,000 out of the fund balance. It may actually be more because some money is going from the fund balance to CIP, and I think the number is actually bigger than that. And so we're really on track to go below that line. And so I'm with Kate and others. If the buildings get sold and it's the year after next and they come, adding to the fund balance, great, then the fund balance will go up closer into the green zone where we like it to be without us having to do anything. And then we can revisit, using money. I would rather spend money that's in the fund balance rather than assuming we'll get money into the fund balance, spend it, and then I'll have the money come into the fund balance. So I would not support, in my opinion, as a budget committee member, if this is revised, to spend more than $300,000 from the fund balance, because we're proposing to do $275,000 plus 20. So it's like $290,000 out of the fund balance, which is way higher than anything we've ever done before.
Go ahead, Tina.
I agree with Dimitri, because I've seen before where, when you say we've got these properties that, fingers crossed, they're gonna sell for, good amount of money.
And I agree that if that comes in future years, yes, use that. But, you know, where we're pushing 8% should be at 12. You know, the high end, I think, is around 17.
Yeah, I think.
You know, according to the DRA, and it's just, you know, I agree that I don't think that we should increase what we're already using.
Okay.
Can this public speak?
Yeah, I mean, we're giving feedback on Tracy's idea, but we still have a separate motion on the table.
So this public, doesn't want to take money out of the undesignated fund either. Tracy and I spoke, suggested the idea, I thought about it. I don't want to take it out because Alice reminded me that the situation that John was describing, where we didn't want to let people go in the recession, is quite different from the situation we're in today, which is trying to keep the tax rate lower for some people that are having trouble. And I hear the members of the public here screeching, excuse me, reporting that their neighbors are all, can't afford these taxes, but they're not delinquent. That's the definition of can't afford your taxes. It's when you're delinquent. They're having to make choices, perhaps. I understand that, but that's not the same as trying to stop people from losing their jobs. So no, I don't want to see you recommend to the budget committee that we spend more out of the undesignated fund.
So we are,
I'll wrap it up with one last comment if I might.
okay.
My purpose in bringing that up was not because I favor it.
No, it's a
It
fine
was
discussion.
because I wanted it discussed.
Sure.
And I wanted people to express their opinion before town meeting, because I believe it will come up in town meeting.
Yeah.
And I thank you all for your opinions. I happen to favor that opinion.
Dan?
I believe we shouldn't take any more undesignated fund, because I'm not sure we're gonna sell the properties.
Right.
And that's what you're basically saying is, we're gonna sell the properties.
We don't have a history
Well,
to do.
we've been sitting on Johnson Beach for 8 months. Ain't sold that. We haven't come close to talking about selling it. And I'm not sure anything's gonna happen with the Methodist Hill next year. And I doubt we're gonna be selling Shed Street by next year. So I don't think it's gonna happen, so I don't want to do something that I know isn't gonna happen.
Okay, so back to Article 2 recommendation. We have a motion and a second on the table to recommend Article.
You did.
Eric did.
Thank you.
So, okay. So in Article 2, just to remind everybody, so we're all on the same page, is the Budget Committee recommended sum that is printed up, which is $9,410,232. And I'm not gonna read the whole article unless somebody needs it read. Does anybody need the article read? Okay, so we have a motion and second on the table, and this is the select board voting. All in favor of recommending the article?
Aye.
Okay. Anybody opposed to recommending the article on the select board? Any abstentions? It passes unanimously. Okay, thank you, guys. Dimitri, back to you.
Article 3, can
minimize that?
we have this, so Article 3 has changed compared to yesterday. So, the taxes that were presented today in the public meeting were based on calculations, I believe, using 111,813.
Yep.
Yep, yes. Yep. 111,813 to then lower the contribution to the CIP, to therefore lower the taxes. So this number is higher. Options we have is to lower taxes more, which I'm not in favor of for some other reasons.
So you can talk about this as a whole, but that's Article 4.
Right.
Article 3 is closing these.
Yeah, you're right. So it's related. So you're right. So I'll just continue. Sorry, I'm not as good as she is about volume.
You were doing awesome. You were doing awesome.
I would say we stick to the number we did all the analysis on and the calculations that was presented at the public hearing. And we take the excess and actually put it into the undesignated
You're on Article 4.
right?
Yeah,
I
okay.
know, that's why I said he reminded me of the wrong article.
I'm making sure my brain is with you.
Yes, so
Thank you.
I think we shouldn't put it all towards taxes for the same reason that it's, yes, it's lowering taxes now, it's gonna jump even bigger next year, and our undesignated fund is going down and down and down and down. I think we should take the extra that came into this fund overnight of 70,000 something and throw it into the undesignated. Yes,
With that, if you continue to add a nickel to the CIP, this one's truly shifting the tax rate to next year, unless you make a big change on that or find money to offset it some other way. So,
Why are we talking about Article 4 and not voting on Article 3?
because Dimi was confused. His brain is running empty.
Can we go back to Article 3, please?
Can I make a motion? We recommend Article 3?
Yes.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor of recommending Article 3 as written?
All of
Unanimous.
us.
All right,
Was that 9 to?
Article 4.
Now that we've discussed it.
The selectmen already voted
Yes.
on this. If anybody wants to change that, who's on the select board,
Yeah.
you can make a motion to amend it.
Yeah. On Article 3, are you comfortable with your vote last night? I'd just like to go down the table so it's on record, or would you like to make a change? Tracy?
I am not clear on the hyphenated numbers. I
No,
know we
we're on
voted
Article-
on 111.
Article 3.
Article 3.
Oh, I'm
Article
sorry.
3 is dissolving the fund.
Oh, back to 3. No, I don't wish to change my vote.
Okay, are you okay? I'm okay. Alice? John?
I'm okay.
Okay, thank you.
Now we can be for.
I'm so sorry.
You were not,
That's all
it's
right.
fine.
Article
This
4.
is a very long evening.
So-
You were okay.
The reason for the hyphenated number is it started with the 111,813.
Yes.
It could go up to 186,291.39.
Or anything in between.
Just,
We could pick a round number.
well, we could round it.
I know, but
110.
I'd rather just stick to the number that we had in our presentation for the public.
That's
And so that is my recommendation to the budget committee. We have to put a number there because I can't say approve as written because it's not written. So what number do we want to put there?
I keep it to what it was.
I'll make a motion that we keep it at $111,813.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous to keep the number to 111.
Yes.
Before we recommend it, should we do the same thing on the select board in case they change it?
You can open the discussion for everybody.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think we'll
all
just
right, let's
go down the table like usual.
I think I'm probably in the minority here, but I think these, with one exception, are funds that people in town clearly put aside for capital reserves, and we should move it all into the CIP, because that's what it was intended for.
Good point.
That is a good point.
Yeah.
I agree with Eric, and my thought on it had been to put the 186,291 in the CIP.
Today, we considered that and I think Eric is right.
Yeah, Garrett,
I don't mind using 70,000 to help the tax rate.
All right.
I don't feel as principled about it as they do.
That doesn't mean you have to use the tax rate though.
I know.
That will be a motion at the public hearing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, at the
Yeah.
town meeting.
So can I make a motion we reconsider our vote?
Yep, if you voted in the affirmative, you can.
All right, so how do I do that?
So she's making a motion to reconsider. She's gonna put it back on the table. She needs a second from someone who voted in the affirmative.
Sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
All right.
Now we're gonna reconsider Article.
So now
You're gonna
my
recommend to
motion,
change the number.
I'm gonna make a motion that we raise and appropriate the sum of $186,291.39.
Second.
All those in favor?
We have discussion here. Where's it going? Into CIP?
CIP.
Oh, yeah.
You're leaving CIP. That's not gonna help us.
Still leaving.
You're leaving.
All right.
Yeah.
That was a good catch. Thank you, Eric.
All those in favor? Aye, unanimous.
Oh, it does.
All right.
I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong article. Yeah,
Everybody's
I
tired.
was my own self confused.
The end too.
Okay, so that takes care of the budget committee. I would entertain a motion from the select board on Article 4, which is to put $186,291.39 into CIP.
I so move.
Second.
Okay,
Everybody's.
we have a motion, a second. Would anyone else like to discuss this? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of recommending? Aye. Okay, it's you, there's any, now I'm a mess.
I would have gone home there.
It's unanimous. I'm sorry.
That's not right.
Recommending 186.
So
Yeah.
that was a good catch.
Thank you, Eric.
Yes, thank you.
Good point.
Now we vote on Article 4?
Yeah, we did already.
Well, you voted to the amount, now you have to vote to recommend or not recommend.
So we haven't done that yet?
No, you voted.
Just wants to change the number.
No.
All right.
Didn't we say recommend on mine?
You did.
Okay,
No,
you guys
we're
did
all
it.
set.
All
I'm
right.
sorry, I cut you off at
Do
the pass.
do I hear a motion to recommend Article 4 with a dollar amount of 186,291.39?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Unanimous.
Should we go to Article 6 and skip one again?
No, Mom.
Okay, Article 5.
Don't you mean 6?
No.
Aye.
Aye.
Two to me.
Ed wants to be called on.
Okay, Article 5.
This is where I strongly recommend that you don't lower that by the 186, because that would be pushing $186,000 of tax increase to next year. If you plan to keep the CIP program the same. So I would recommend modifying that number by something. You can still put all the money into CIP, but this is where you lower the amount you're gonna
Okay,
take from
I
tax.
would recommend not touching this article, because if the other ones don't pass, you still want to raise the money.
Well, you don't do it now.
No, you want to
It's gonna be
leave this
modified on the
alone.
floor, but I would have your discussion here of what
Yes.
you're gonna
And then
ask
in-
that to be modified.
We can have it in the script to have it amended at town meeting by whatever amount you guys discuss.
So if Article 3 and Article 4 pass, then set language.
Then you
Right.
will.
Yeah.
You'll vote to bring it up for discussion, then you'll vote to amend it to whatever you want it to be.
Oh, you had that written in the other one.
It's now in the notes. I took the
It's in the
notes.
notes.
And so the one point to call out, and I know there's different opinions on whether Article 5's number gets lower. The calculations that were done are assuming that about 100,000 of that number comes down.
Yeah.
The calculations assume that it drops by about 100,000.
The original plan was to drop this by an amendment at town meeting, if the others pass, by the 111.
But the calculations presented to the public and the budget are assuming that Article 3 passes, Article 4 passes, and Article 5 is amended by about 110,000.
Not 186,000.
Not
That's your point.
186.
110.
110.
So what, okay, so I'll stipulate that's true. That's what we told them.
Yep.
Why does it matter whether, I mean, why wouldn't we say 186,000? Just because we told them 111?
I'm only trying to point out the calculations assume 110.
I'd give two reasons not to do it. One, again, you just double the tax increase the next year. It's truly just kicking the, you just have to make it up again the next year. And the second one is the overall, with the inflation in vehicles and road maintenance and everything, an injection of money into CIP is probably a good idea.
Wise investment, I think.
I'd also point out that CIP in 2025 is headed into a very large year of expenses, not the least of which is the replacement of the shaker of the bridge.
That bridge, yeah.
Over the next river.
That's just one expense, but there's a lot of expenses that pop up in 2025
Yeah.
Right.
compared to 2024.
But
So
we have to have some tough discussions on that.
the 100,000, the 111,000, but I would leave the balance with the CIP.
I'm sorry, I feel like I'm missing something.
So
Well, are we talking about changing the $600,000?
down.
We'll change it
At
down.
town
Down.
meeting,
At town meeting, not tonight.
I know it's not a town meeting.
yes.
And what would the effect of that be?
Lowering taxes.
Okay,
Well, yes and no,
why wouldn't,
Well, yes,
because if
One-
two misses, that's your budget. So it's not gonna lower the taxes.
yes, it could,
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
if two passes and if
CIP.
five passes with a lower dollar amount,
Right,
the total taxation comes down.
right.
Um,
But your budget number stays the same.
The budget number stays the same, but the tax rate.
Rate goes down.
Can I
Yes.
just remind everybody, so we're on the same page, Article 2 eventually has to pass. We have to stay there
Until
at
we-
town meeting until we come to an agreement. I just want to make sure,
Oh, yeah.
there's no up or down. We're spending the
You
night.
spend-
So,
Well, yeah, you're right. It's probably the night
Night.
because.
No, I
petition
mean-
Articles are, should go an hour apiece.
right, and so I just want everybody, it's not just an up or down, like going and checking off a box. Like, we
Right.
really have to work together to make something happen on
Right.
Article 2.
And so my only point was that yes, there's a lot of expenses in 2025, but we're gonna have to take a very critical eye at all that. Because if we do everything that is in here, when we say it's in here, CIP runs out of money.
Yeah, it'll change.
And so it is going to
Or,
change.
or we have to bond.
in 2027,
Right.
CIP runs out of money
Well, unless you bond.
unless you bond.
And CIP was set up to bond.
Yeah.
It was never set up to spend cash.
We've just been fortunate that in the last 3 years, we've only spent that.
We've only spent cash, which is fortunate because the interest rates are high right now.
Now, in 2 years, it may be beneficial for the town to reconsider it.
Right, because,
It could be possible if there's a reduction in bond rates,
right,
that we could get back into the market.
because most likely you don't pay for a bridge dam with cash.
Right.
You actually bond it.
But maybe some cash.
And it's one thing to buy a cruiser with cash, it's another thing to pay for a bridge. with
Right.
cash.
Right.
Well, in one case you get a cruiser and the other. you get a bridge.
So, but essentially, it's back to the use of unassigned fund balance, right?
Are we
It's a-
going anywhere here?
No, we're not.
No,
Let's get
move
this
on.
on track.
Okay,
All right,
sorry, thank you. So,
that was my point.
so we're not changing the article here.
No.
Do I hear a motion to approve Article 5 as written?
second,
All in favor? Unanimous.
72-0. Did you guys ever do yours?
They did.
They did last night.
Okay, Article 6. So Article 6 is the Police Recruitment Retention Bonus Trust Fund with $20,000 in it from the unassigned fund balance. So here an article to approve. Do I hear a motion to approve Article 6?
make a motion
as
to recommend,
Motion to recommend.
written? Oh, sorry.
correct, make a motion to recommend the
I'll
article. as
second
written.
that.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Article 8. So if those who were here yesterday, that's essentially just rescinding some authority that the town has. There's really no tax impact. Do I hear a motion to recommend Article 8?
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye. Unanimous. And we are down to two more. Article 11, which this may need some discussion because I don't think everybody was here yesterday, but this is essentially to set up that fund related to youth sports. And the reason, and Ed can correct me if I'm wrong, the reason to make the fund is so that if other towns are paying into supporting youth sports that we're organizing, that money stays in one place and we don't end up using Kane's money for fixing roads.
So,
Is that essentially
Well,
true?
it
Yeah,
allows
the way
you,
the fund accounting works, if we put it in our general fund budget to offset youth sports and we don't spend it at the end of the year, it falls into undesignated fund balance. This resolving fund keeps that money separate to be used on youth.
I move that we, recommend the article as written.
Second. All in favor? Aye,
aye.
unanimous. All right, and one more. This is a petition article. Oh, so there was some discussion on this yesterday. I don't know if everybody, was everybody here yesterday? Okay,
I was.
do you have to discuss it again or? Do I hear a motion to recommend Article 18 as written? to recommend or not recommend?
I will not so move.
I'll recommend that we do not recommend.
Right, anybody,
Well, you should.
anybody second?
To not do something.
Yeah.
You should do a motion to do something and then vote it down.
Yes,
Okay.
right,
All
I
right.
make a motion, we recommend.
alright.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor of Article 18?
Do not raise.
Okay,
I'll recommend.
all
it.
those against recommending Article 18? Unanimous against.
No,
Not
because
recommended.
those are
So I'll basically word it the same way as I did for the select board. The
Right.
Budget committee does not recommend this article by a vote of 9-0.
Right.
So just to keep it.
Meeting minutes.
Oh, I haven't even, that's probably good.
Just say that.
I'll just be
All
quiet.
We approve the minutes as written for
Did we even get consent for it?
the last two
Whatever,
meetings.
second.
Any discussion on the meeting minute?
I did notice in
I didn't get
addition,
it. Oh,
Renee Reagan was also here. All the businessmen.
Did she speak?
Did she speak?
Renee?
Yes, she does. She speak. If she didn't speak.
Oh,
we
she
don't have
didn't
to
speak,
let
you
her-
don't count.
No, she didn't speak.
Oh, I thought, okay, no, sorry about that.
Yeah, she did.
It's all right.
All in favor of approving the meeting minutes as written? All. Unanimous, are you?
I'm not voting on it. So.
Okay, so
Okay.
8 and then 1 abstention.
Was that for both sets?
All right, what's next? Any other public comment?
I have a couple of questions, and I'm sorry, I know you guys have had a long day, but I figure this is the best spot for this. So, I was looking at some other articles, this is from 2020. Article 14, we appropriated $40,000 for sidewalks, and we've never done one thing for sidewalks, and I'm just wondering, where did that 40,000 go?
That'll be spent this year.
On sidewalks.
On sidewalks.
And my other question is, which I know is probably already out there, but I'd like to know the answer directly, is why do we have to have a public hearing for the SB two?
It's required by law.
Oh, okay.
You mean, why can't we just switch to it?
No, but I meant we didn't have a public hearing for any other petition warrant article, so I was wondering why we had to have one.
Yeah, required by law.
Okay, that's what I assumed, but.
I just want to ask a question, Jane, is her name Jane?
Yes.
Yes. Before you were talking about kind of where to cut
Mm-hmm.
and why, and, this is nothing personal about what I'm about to say for anybody. It's more of it's a question I have in my mind that I need clarification for. What I don't understand in looking at kind of how spending has happened in the last couple of years and how perhaps positions have been added and increasing. One that comes to mind is the recreation director. My understanding is we went from a 50% volunteer position that I thought was working quite well to hiring somebody. And maybe that volunteer person didn't want to do it anymore. I could understand that. But then the person was, why wouldn't the person be hired in at 50%? Or then I saw that they increased to 35 hours. And then I saw that they increased to 40 hours. And it doesn't seem to me that there's anything new happening in town for recreation that wasn't happening before that would necessitate a full-time position. And now we're having, well, I understand the revolving fund because I understand how that's set up. And I'm not against recreation in town, but I just haven't really seen anything happen that equates a full-time position for a town of 4,400 people.
I think it's fair to say that one of the reasons is the collapse of the Mascoma Youth Sports League. It has simply, it's decimated of their participants. So in essence, has collapsed.
And just one point of clarification, the previous person was paid, the 50% was a paid position.
Yeah.
It was not a volunteer.
I'm not gonna speak as to why MYSL collapsed. It's simply that they have come to the town and said, we're done.
Well, I'll correct that. They said we need help, right? And so the MYSL board essentially was 2 or 3 people doing all the work, organizing all the sports for the whole school district, 2 or 3 people. And there was a lot of turnover in that because parents are doing it because otherwise my kid can't do sports. And then as soon as their kid is done, they leave. But that is not the only reason. I believe other activities were done by volunteers, and those volunteers decided, oh, we've had enough. And I think Kevin is picking all that up. And so it's not like, it's essentially a lot of volunteer work. People were done with it. And
Nobody else is stepping up.
Nobody else is stepping up. Do you wanna, oh, Bridget, so I was
I
gonna
could talk too.
so let's have Ed go first and then Bridget.
Bridget can explain a little more of what was happening, but like any turnover, it's gonna take a year or so for that person coming in just to understand what was happening, what needs to happen. We've been making some efficiencies, we've been changing some things, and we're looking at adding some programming. He's working a lot. He's also taken on all the rentals of facilities in town, so all the community building rentals, all of those things that we're taking up a lot of time in other areas to make it happen. So we've been really looking at efficiencies, and we've been talking the last few weeks and months on increased recreational activities, trying to reach into different demographics. And I think that was the plan all along. It just takes some time to work through how to do your job. I mean, the cost of turnover and increase and stuff is real. It takes quite a long time to get that up. So there will be increased activities. He is looking at taking on youth sports moving forward, which is going to help with the MYSL issues. That was one of the first meetings I had in town. I got called by the school district and said, help. It's a real need, and it's something that we're looking at.
It's not only a need, it affects the safety in your town. Because when I was doing Shaker Rec Park, we looked at, if you have recreation for your youth, you have less vandalism, less police calls, because these kids have something to do. And they're busy. And to me, it's money well spent in a positive way, rather than, having more police coverage.
And hopefully more for our fellow police.
Yeah. Well, and there are a lot of programs for people that are older, like the yoga and bone builders and different things. I mean, for a little town. Yeah.
And there've been more things for families.
Yes.
Bridget?
I can, as Ed said too, I stepped into the role. I think it's important to know that MYSL was assisted by the Mascoma Recreation. So Katie was handling it. Now she was paid from Canaan and Enfield originally. During my time, I kind of stepped in and I was helping because I took over Katie's role. And then I covered Enfield's role when that went vacant. So I was doing all of the things. I think, as Dimitri said too, right? It was parents sitting on the board. It's a constant flux and a constant flow. It's not all of the schools. It's the elementary schools and up to 6th grade that is served by youth sports. Then it turns to the school district that covers it. So when you have that turnover too, it's hopefully the program builds and grows, because when you have constant changeover, you lose people. And so people were looking for organized activities because they didn't feel this was organized anymore. So it's just a whole combination of pieces. Most towns do run youth sports through their recreation departments. So it thankfully is kind of working, that we were able to hire somebody. When we looked at the position originally, we talked about 40. We talked about we wouldn't start there. We would start lower, look at what was happening, reflect on it, and the potential would be there to then increase the hours as necessary. So this also, taking on the youth sports, will help to support some of that. And as Jane said, it also, it's great for our community and the kids and the families. So, you know, putting on my like public hat, I will say that I hope to see additional programs added for people of my age. That one's a little more challenging. But you know, again, that's asking a person to do more. So, you know, there's still room to grow, but I think we have to give him the time, and we have to, there's no handbook for recreation. That's the one thing everybody told me when I stepped into the role. You kind of go, I can share what happened in the programs, but no one tells you the best way to do it. And here's how it gets done. So it's a learning curve. But I think, you know, it just takes time. So, and I think it will, I'm hoping it will continue to grow. And you know, I think if you would like something, you have to reach out and ask.
And it bears repeating to Sharon that the revenue side is going to go up for this to help cover that, you know, additional hours. So-
Since I belong to both boards, motion to adjourn.
Oh, I love it.
Second.
It's non-debatable.
I wanted to say one thing.
Oh, it's
I'm sorry.
non-debatable. We
Not
have-
debatable. There's a motion on the floor.
I know.
So Dimitri, you're
All right.
first.
All those in favor of
You
adjournment?
need a second. Do you?
Oh, well, he seconded.
Okay.
All in favor of adjournment? All right.
Are you making the motion for the select board?
For both
Wow, I
boards.
love it. Who's my second?
That's the way to go.
Who is the second from the select board, please? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.
The select board.
So what I wanted to say,
Oh, you-
say anyway, but
Majority second.
when we come
Oh,
back,
yeah.
Yeah, we did.
could you
At least 5 people raised their hand.
whatever you found out about